so it is so awesome to see everybody here. So like she said, my name is Vanya Garabedian. I am a therapist here in Albuquerque. My practice is intentional path counseling. Um, I love what I get to do. I feel very privileged to get to do it. And when I get asked to do these, it's an honor. So I'm super happy to be here. Something that's really important for me, for y'all to know uh, during these workshops. Primary importance is you doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. So please, like if you need to get up and stretch or move around or whatever that looks like, feel free to do it. Snacks, all the things that Lauda said. Um, I also want to acknowledge too about the collective wisdom that's here. I am somebody who gets to do this, and I also understand that we have a lot of experts in the room. So I really welcome that, and I encourage people to share any additions, little things that they would like to share. Next slide. So also know that you really everything I do is challenged by choice. So participate at the level that you are comfortable and that feels right for you. Um, Respect your own boundaries, and while also challenging yourself and pushing yourself. So it's a both and, right? Like respect your boundaries, do participate as much as you would like, and if you can challenge yourself a little bit, I find people get the most out of these when they do that. Some norms that I want us to agree to. Participate at the level that feels right for you. What is shared in this room stays in this room. The importance of somebody's mic is not muted. Um, the importance of confidentiality in order for folks to be able to get the most out of today's workshop is really important. I really want people to be able to just kind of exhale for the next couple of hours and feel like they have the ability to share and get the most out of this. And I find when people are able to be honest, they are able to get more out of it. So if we can all just kind of silently agree to keep what is shared here in this room, well, in the virtual room. I am aware that this is a training focused for supervisors and leaders, which means we have a lot of expertise here today. You're both the learner and the expert, which means the collective wisdom that I mentioned before. And also, what does it look like to allow yourself to open up a little and not have to lead today, not have to take on that responsibility and create some space for the potential to learn something and or go deeper with knowledge that you already have. Are there any questions so far about expectations, agreements, what we're going to do today? Okay, next slide. So we're really looking at healing-centered supervision and how can we show up in a way that is supportive, not only of our staff and the people we work with, but also for ourselves. So the learning objectives, we're going to be looking at staff wellness. We're going to look at what healing supervision actually fosters, how it actually does foster wellness and resilience. It's not just a nice idea. I mean, we get a lot of buzzwords in this field, yeah? Uh, there's an actual real structure around it. Like there's actual things that we can put into place to support ourselves and the people that we support. We're also going to get into supporting differences. And I want to make sure I'm not talking too fast for the translators, interpreters.
All good, all good.
Mm. Supporting differences. We will get into neurodivergence and cultural diversity. Specifically, we are going to be focused on the neurodivergent category and the unseen as part of diversity. We often think about it in terms of race, identity, sex, and those types of categories, which are important. And then there's a lot of unseen diversity that we have on our teams, and we may or may not be aware of it. Cultural and outcomes, we're going to be talking about and examining how leadership and supervision practices in the day-to-day are what actively shapes the team culture. It's not about the party we have at the holidays to support everyone. Those are nice. I'm not saying get rid of them. It's really how do we show up in our positions every day? What you do as a supervisor in a one-to-one meeting affects who stays on your team and who decides to leave. And we are going to start with team climate. Next slide. And I want to give a moment if there are any questions about the learning objectives. Okay. So when we're talking about team climate and leadership, next slide, we're talking about what leadership actually creates. And I want to start with something that might sound simple. It might feel obvious, and it's particularly significant and easily forgotten. It's the team climate and how it is built. It's not a personality. Like we all have personalities. It is not a coincidence. It's not about whether the people on your team like each other or don't get along. It really is about it's constructed actively over time by decisions leaders make about how to communicate. It's built by how you handle conflict. It's built by what gets named and what doesn't get named. Are we acknowledging the difficult moments? Are we pretending they didn't happen? Or do they just kind of get a moment, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, that was difficult. Let's move on. Supervision shapes morale and retention. The number one effective way to keep retention at practices and teams and in the behavioral health field consistently comes back to the supervision and leadership relationship with the people that work there. People, when they feel supported and seen by their supervisors, will they stay, even if it means less money. I'm not saying pay people less. I'm just suggesting people will choose the job where they feel the most supported, regardless of the income, assuming they're making a livable wage. It's the psychological inclusion is structural. It means people genuinely feel a part of a team. It's not just talk. They feel physically present. They're not just physically present, they are also included. They're included in the thinking, the culture, the practice. And what I mean by it's built through structure, it's through the policies and practices and habits and choices that either open up doors for folks to feel like they can walk through or close them and creates this kind of like isolated experience. What gets ignored it becomes heavy. This is when there's a dynamic or a difficulty or a pattern. It doesn't just disappear. It's in the room. It sticks around. I think about teams that I've been a part of when there's that one person on the team that is particularly challenging, doesn't do their job. Their lack of effectiveness in their job makes it harder for everyone else, and it never gets addressed. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Or a misstep that somebody made and everyone is aware of, and no one wants to talk about it because it's too hard. it doesn't go away. It makes the environment heavier and harder. And what gets punished becomes secret. So, how do we actually support people when there is a misstep without shaming? If people are shamed or if it's like a reprimand all the time, if the climate is instant write up or whatever that might look like, what happens is people don't stop making mistakes. They no longer bring it forward for support and for help. So how do you do this? How do we create that climate to actually take away the shame, like public correction, calling people out can be an unintended way that people get shamed. How do we shift it to people feeling like they are actually included and their voice matters? And then what gets repaired actually builds trust. So this is one that I love and I come back to over and over again, even like in my clinical practice and what I do. The repair is such a powerful experience. It can get confused with admitting like, oh, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. I apologize because it gets confused, right? With somehow I failed. I really, well, you guys are going to see my fallibility today, which I hope gives people room to relax about what it looks like to have a misstep because we're human and to come back and repair and to show up more genuinely. Growth, trust is developed. It's actually how trust is built. It's not about the misstep. It's not about the struggle. It's about how we acknowledge it and how we role model it for the folks that we're supporting. Accountability, and it does not take accountability away. Let me be really clear. It's it is actually taking accountability and creating room to own it and walk through it in a way. And that experience, whether it's with clients that we're supporting in the clinical frame or staff, that magic, like that's where the magic happens. And I am curious if anybody here has an experience of repair that they would be willing to share, either in the chat or raise your hand. And if it's in the chat, if somebody can let me know, because I can't see it. I think about this time. Oh, it can also build respect. Absolutely, Ty. Oh, I guess I did see that. Anyone else want to add to what repair does, their experience?
Could be acknowledging your own past mistakes when talking with the staff about their current mistake. Acknowledging that none of us are perfect, we are human first.
Yes, thank you for that. Was that Joan? Yeah, thank you, Joan. That was, yes, it's like the more we can demonstrate fallibility and what it looks like to be human versus this idea of whatever we have that professionalism is, the more we do build that trust and create room for everything that y'all are saying. Rebuilding, accountability, trust. Absolutely. Thank you. Next slide. Another piece of how we affect our team climate is recognizing that it is built. Um, Supervision is shaped, morale and retention, it is all shaped. Clear is kind. Often we want to save people from feeling bad. And oh, let me own my fallibility. Did y'all just notice I was repeating the slide before versus the slide that we moved to? So I want to acknowledge that and move forward and recognize that that might have been confusing. And in these little moments, we get to create trust and experience and an environment where people feel like they can actually talk to us and be who they are. So, getting back to clear is kind, that is attributed to Brene Brown. And I am using it intentionally because we can often think we're hurting somebody's feelings or we don't want to disrupt things. And if we're not skilled at or used to or have had an opportunity to learn how to be clear in a respectful, assertive way, we can misinterpret it as us being mean and hurtful and all of these things. So it's kind of like when you do that, oh, well, I know you did the best that you can and you'll get it better next time, is really ambiguous versus, hey, I noticed that you struggled in this area and what I identified as a challenge for you. How can I support you? How can we be more clear? The ambiguity creates confusion, it creates anxiety, and it is not the flexibility that it sometimes gets mistaken for. When someone does not know what success looks like in their role, or if the goalpost keeps moving, when the do your best is the only standard, I'm not saying that standard isn't in there. We want to support people in doing the most effective job that they can. When it isn't followed with some sort of clear direction and support, it is not actually it's not that freedom or flexible workplace that sometimes people think it is. It's actually a situation where staff gets unknown. And then what do? They fill it in with the worst possible case scenarios. Team's relationship to mistakes mirrors yours as a leader. This is incredibly helpful to really stick with and think about. And I'm going to say it again. A team's relationship to mistakes mirrors the leader. How your team relates to mistakes, whether they're hiding it, whether they're talking about it, do they catastrophize or learn from it, they are reflecting back to you what the environment supports. It's a reflection of what they've learned by being a part of that team, by watching you, by getting to know the culture. And the more effectively we're able to own our mistakes, the more effectively we are able to uh, support our teams. And also, the more trust is built where people feel they can come forward. And this is an important one also to keep in mind. Feedback given without relationship lands as a threat. Our nervous system does not actually know the difference between feedback and a threat. How it is determined is built on the relationship that is already there. So before there is a corrective statement or feedback, how do we kind of take a step back and actually recognize who's in front of us to allow that actually to that feedback to land? And direct communication is not the only form of communication. Direct communication is, I mean, in my experience, direct communication gets held up in our cultural norms. We'll come back to this more when we get into the cultural diversity part. And I just kind of want to plant that seed that that assumption is that the most competent or professional person in the room is the one who can say their thoughts clearly and communicate in a way that is direct. That is not a universal norm. And when we only value one communication style, we unintentionally miss so much that's going on in the room. Are there any questions before we move on?
Yeah, a question popped up in the chat.
Mhm.
They would love to hear your wisdom on holding colleagues accountable when there's a microaggression, offensive comment,
Ooh,
etc.
Yeah,
And then
right.
this may be addressed later today, but
We will address microaggressions briefly. That is a topic that deserves uh, a lot more time than we have to give it today. And we will be addressing it briefly. Um, Later on when we get into I believe it's in the cultural diversity part. There are, I actually do workshops around this that go deeper into it to support people and how to navigate this. And more importantly, for folks to become more aware of what they may or may not be doing that is causing unintended harm. It is a great question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to go into the first activity. The first activity, if we can go to the next slide, is the climate audit. So, what I am asking you to do first, if you don't have your worksheets that were emailed to you pulled up, please pull them up. When you go into your breakout room, I am asking you to really think about the team you are on right now. What does that climate feel like? How much of that climate was created by leadership? And include yourself in that. Like, challenge by choice. I'm not asking people to share things that they're uncomfortable with. I'm asking people to self reflect and share what you feel comfortable sharing with the people in the breakout room. What are the things? What is one thing that is going unaddressed? And what is the cost? What's the cost to either morale or client care? We're going to talk about too how this is all part of ties into clinical outcomes. It's not just a great idea, it also affects how well people are supported. You don't even actually have to answer if you're not feeling it today. There's no right or wrong. It's really about getting honest and self-reflecting with each other, as comfortable as people feel, and also with yourself. And then when we get back from the breakout rooms, we are going to debrief a little bit. Any questions before you guys go off? Welcome back, folks. Instead of doing a group kind of debrief verbally to try to catch up on some of the time, I'm going to ask people who would like to share what they noticed, what they recognized, what became apparent in the chat while we kind of move forward. And I do want to check in to see if anybody has a question before we move forward with anything that we've gone over so far, because it's a lot of information.
Yeah, one of the things that was shared was that in any nice environment, a healthy working environment, there's no gossip, there's no bad vibes among the staff, and they all just kind of support each other. You know, if you're falling short, someone else can step in.
Yes, people aren't.
Kindness,
Sorry, go ahead.
kindness and gentleness was also mentioned.
Oh, I love that. Yes. People do not feel intimidated or afraid to actually be kind and respectful. And it can seem a little counterintuitive that that would be something people might not feel is okay to do. And depending on the work environment, I mean, that can happen where it's not the norm. So people shore up is how I think of it to keep themselves protected. All right, let's go on. Thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So, supervision beyond oversight. When we're talking about healing centered, we're talking about a people first um, framework. We can often think of supervision. I mean, there is that part, right? We want to make sure people are getting their documentation done. We want to make sure people are doing their job, which is oversight. And also, how do we put the person more at the center than the actual tasks? So we're putting people first. We're also acknowledging the power differential that's in the room. Sometimes people don't want to talk about it, they don't want to mention it, and everyone knows it's there, right? So if you're in a supervisor position, a leadership position, a team lead, or a clinical director, or an owner, there is inherently power in that relationship, just like with the folks that we support. And instead of avoiding the conversation, healing-centered leadership actually talks about it and brings it out. And we do it in a way that holds without shame, right? Because I don't know about y'all, but if you have the experience in the world that like, no, don't put attention on you, don't talk about whatever it is that you might be good at or anything like that, you don't want to bring attention to yourself, it might be more challenging to kind of just talk about it and say, hey, let's address it. Let's talk about the power dynamic. It is also the going back to the repair is normal practice. Accountability with dignity. How do we actually hold people accountable without shaming, reprimanding, and being so punitive? And what does the person need to do their best work? So healing-centered supervision asks these questions. It comes from this framework: people-centered, people first, and what do they actually need to do their best work versus they're not getting their notes done, I'm going to write them up again and da 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 da, whatever that might look like. Next slide. I love this quote. Healing-centered practice shifts the question from what is wrong with you to what happened to you and what are your gifts. So we're depathologizing and we're getting out of the story of the pathology, the harm, and into how did this shape you in a way that you have gifts. And I do want to be clear that we're not ignoring harm. That is not what I mean. We do want to give attention to the to what happened. We don't want to stay there. It's incomplete. Next slide. Wellness, resilience, and trust. Resilience is not grit. We live in a culture and a society where we love resilience and it gets rewarded. The person who is willing to take on the hardest clients, the person who is willing to work late and come in early, those behaviors get rewarded and mistaken for uh, an effective way to walk through a workplace versus we'll get into masking later, what it could actually be. Uh, it's also the people that you tend to lose because they get tired. Oh, it is what becomes possible when systems create genuine inclusion. So when we're talking about genuine inclusion, it is not a trait you pull from inside yourself. It is actually something that the environment supports. So it's not that person needs to do something to be included more. That staff person needs to participate more. That staff person, hey, we don't put the onus on them. We look at the system and we look at the structure of the practice and how we show up to create an environment where that person will be supported in coming in. And staff wellness is a clinical outcome. It is directly connected to outcomes with the folks that you're supporting. So it's not just a great idea. No, I mean, I say it's a great idea, staff wellness. It is also directly connected to client retention rates, success rates, who actually goes through whatever program or services that you provide and has success with it. It's directly connected to the practitioners that are supporting them, which is directly connected to the supervisors, which is directly connected to the system of the practice. And I do want to acknowledge there's a lot of systems that are broken and people only have so much power to be able to change the environment they're in. And I want to just call out, I'm not asking people to take on a whole system. I'm asking people to do some self-reflection and look at where can you contribute, not necessarily change everything. And support is ethical practice. It is not a benefit. I mean, I'll keep it on myself and my own experience. I've worked at places where the pizza party once a year is couched as a benefit versus it's actually ethical practice to support staff in a person-centered way that can create that contributes to the healing centered supervision. Next slide. We're going back to how trust is built. It's through the small repeated moments, not a single gesture. I know I mentioned the pizza party, or at the end of the year holiday party. Beautiful. Don't cut it out. And also, what are the small repeated moments that are happening? Like, are people taking the time to say, hey, how was your day? Like, just a simple check-in. It doesn't have to be like a big thing. It can just simply say hi in the hallway. You're acknowledging that there's a person there. Repair it, repair what happened. Don't just move past it. It can be really easy to want to say, oh, just kind of apologize and move forward because it can be so uncomfortable. Instead of just apologizing and move forward, how do we take a moment, take a pause, take responsibility, and then actually do whatever might be needed? Cultural humility is ongoing. It's also an important piece of healing-centered supervision where we are keeping ourselves open to learning, understanding we do not know it all, and we allow people to teach us. Next slide. I'm going to move a little faster so we can get through this. Cultural, and if you have questions as we go, please put them in the chat and they will let me know. Cultural expectations around authority and feedback. It varies so much. In some cultures, the norm is to respect authority, do not question, eye contact, all of these sorts of pieces. And in other cultures, it's actually respectful to engage and actually challenge the idea and engage in critical thinking and thought. And identity, race, gender, generation, role shapes this experience. I've been thinking a lot about the arc of history lately and how it can be an incredibly helpful tool to look at the arc over the last 100 years of generations, which can help give context to how different people might be showing up in the office. Silence and indirectness can be cultural, not resistance. I learned this when I went to Armenia for the first time. None of the men would look me in the eye. And I thought it was a dismissive disrespect until, and I'm Armenian. I'm like, I know my culture. And I'm not an expert on it. It's no culture is homogenous. And it was actually how men show respect to women that they think might have a partner. So that's an example. Let's go to the next slide. And the next. We're getting into neurodivergence as part of cultural diversity and supportive practice. How we usually think about cultural diversity tends to be race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, religion, and national origin. These things are important. We don't throw them out. It's simply an incomplete picture. Next slide. How are we doing on time? Am I catching up?
You are catching up.
Okay, great. What gets left out is the invisible disabilities. Neurodivergence is one of them, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that in a moment. It's also the invisible, which neurodivergence is invisible a lot of times. Individual disabilities and chronic illness, the person who has autoimmune disorders, or the person who is struggling with their mental health. Those aren't seen. So when somebody presents as really competent and effective, what often gets overlooked is that when there's a misstep or they're not able to get something finished, it's not a deficit. It's simply there's something going on for them that would benefit from some attention. And of course, the onus is on the person if they want to share with you these more personal things about their life. And identities that layer in ways that do not fit neat categories. Man, we love black and white, good and bad, clear, concise categories in the dominant American culture. And there is so much about life, identity, and experience that just simply doesn't fit. And instead of looking at whatever doesn't fit as an inconvenience and difficulty, how do we, in healing-centered leadership, open it up so we can kind of invite that difference in and get comfortable with the uncomfortable, the uncertainty, the gray? And who feels included, who's masking, and who is accommodated in name only. So saying we're supportive of folks is not the same thing as being supportive. Saying your door is always open is not the same thing as people feeling like they can actually walk through the door. Next slide. So we're going to talk more about that interior experience. When diversity is thought of as representation alone, we are missing so much of the picture. Who feels known enough or comfortable enough or seen enough to actually be themselves in the environment that they're in? And who has learned to perform in order to belong, and who is present in the room and absent from the conversation. So that person who is quiet in team meetings, there may be a piece that is being missed. And it also may be cultural. So it gets layered and complicated quick, right? So it requires the leaders, the supervisors, the clinical directors to be the role model of what it looks like to be curious, take a step back, and allow people to show us who they are, teach us who they are. I really do want to acknowledge that what we're talking about today is hard. This is hard work. So I want to add a little plug in there to do it in a way. Well, I guess it's not. It's a plug for you to own. How do you do it in a way that's sustainable? This isn't about like, oh my gosh, I'm going to take this all on and I need to change everything. It's take a breath, take a step back, give yourself the same room that you give others. And what is one small thing that you can do, which we'll get into at the end. Next slide. So what is happening beneath the surface? So there are natural variations in the nervous processing. These are not deficits, which they can often look like if the system is structured in a way that it's supportive of the dominant culture versus creating room for people to be who they are. Sensory overload in an open or unpredictable environment is a great example of like an unseen challenge. If someone has a neurodivergent brain and the office is open or there's a lot of disruptions and interruptions, it isn't as simple as being the oh, okay, thank you so much, or whatever that is to get back on task. It can actually create a disruption in the nervous system, a dysregulated experience that now that person is doing their best to control, regulate, and get back to, and often requires some transition time. Task initiation fatigue and decision overwhelm. What's actually happening when you're noticing this in someone? ADHD is often described as a disorder of attention. I think this is important because it often gets overlooked. When we really look at what ADHD, it is an actual disorder of the executive function. Like the frontal cortex isn't quite awake enough, or I don't know how to say that without it sounding pathologized. It's simply working in a different way. The ability to start tasks, shift, prioritize, and regulate the internal experience takes a lot of effort. And I'm stating this, I wasn't sure if I was going to share this or not, but I have ADD, and I know it's not an official, like I have an official diagnosis, and I know that AUDHD isn't an official diagnosis, and my neurodivergence shows up in this frame of ADD with some autistic traits. So I can speak from my own personal experience and remembering this isn't across the board experience, that it takes time and it is exhausting when you're practicing showing up in this way that people or that you believe is professional or will help you belong. And transition time, so needed. And the social uncertainty and the unspoken workplace norms is a very real thing. So if there is something that is unspoken about the norms, and there is so much, like how people dress, how people take their breaks, do they take breaks? Do they not take breaks? If it's not explicitly outlined somewhere, it's going to make it harder for the folks that you may not be aware of that are struggling. And overfunctioning and burnout is a masking pattern. So whoever those people are on your team, that everyone, and it may be you. I mean, if you're here in a leadership position, leaders often have neurodivergent traits because of the ability to overperform and mask and show up in this drive. I'm not saying everyone, I'm just suggesting this may include you too. So to be aware that like, uh, oh my gosh, that person looks so great because they're doing so much work. Why can't everybody be like them? The potential that they are over functioning and burning out is high. Check in with that person. And if it's you, check in with yourself. And there was something else I wanted to mention. How are we doing on time? Time check?
I would say you're doing well. You've got about 15 minutes till the next activity.
Oh, okay. So we can spend a little more time here. We're back on track.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. So what I wanted to get into about what's happening beneath the surface a little bit more is by definition, beneath the surface, we don't see it, right? And the social uncertainty of the unspoken, those implicit words, rules, I mean, the neurotypical staff will absorb these norms implicitly. And the autistic staff person or whatever the challenge is not going to. And it might create a situation where they're just like confused. So the good news is, because I know this is like, how do we cater to every single person? Well, here's the good news. By creating clear and kind policies, procedures, expectations, makes it more supportive for everyone. I saw this comic that I think said it so well, and I wish I had could have found it to put it in the slides, where it shows like someone in a wheelchair they're not able to get inside to this place because there's stairs and there's no ramps. And people complaining about, well, we can't cater to everyone. And then the solution was, well, when you make a ramp, everyone can get in. So how do we get out of this mindset of whatever the cultural norm is what happens and everyone else has to adjust and figure it out? The healing centered model says, what is the simplest, kindest solution that supports everyone? And when we take the person who may be struggling in to the fold and meet their needs, you're also, the unintended benefit is everyone else also benefits. Any questions? All right, next slide. Where does the system fall short? It goes back to these vague requests and shifting priorities. I do want to acknowledge we work in a very chaotic, stressful field. And sometimes when I do these, I'm all like, oh my gosh, Vanya, like, who is actually able to do this? And I do want to say and reflect back to folks, I am aware of and know quite a few practices now who do this. So it is possible, and it can be very overwhelming, and simple does not mean easy. And if you're not in a position to make shifts, it's going to create a different kind of challenge. And this is how our systems tend to fall short. Vague requests, and we're talking specifically about neurodiversity. You can see when somebody's arm is broken and they need extra support to get their, I don't know, their works bag to their car. You can see the person in the wheelchair is going to require a ramp. What we can't see is all of these invisible things. And it goes from like autism, ADD, God, there's so many, mental health, autoimmune, all of these different things. So vague requests and shifting priorities. I have worked in plenty of workplaces where that is the norm, and it comes from a well-meaning place. So let's just normalize the human experience. And I really do believe this. People are always doing the best that they can, even when it looks like shitty behavior. People are always doing the best that they can at any given moment. So someone who is leading, or a team that is leading with shifting priorities and vague requests, may simply be coming from like this position of, oh, we're really flexible here and open to people's ideas and what they want to do, without the recognition that that actually creates a more challenging situation. I think of it as a container, right? Like we're tasked with, and this can apply to so many situations, like when I'm working with individuals, when I'm doing a workshop, when I'm working in supervision, I'm tasked with creating a container that is big enough for the person to be able to bounce around and find their way and feel supported, and not so big that they bounce out. So how do we do this with our systems? Um, Feedback without clarity or time to integrate. Well, I just told you this. We just talked about it in the team meeting. Why aren't you doing it? It takes time for neurodivergent folks to actually process and bring it in to their system. Meetings structured for one processing style. I was thinking about this when I was going through the notes. Like, oh yeah, like this can be an example of, I mean, it's both, it's visual and audio, right? And also may not be the most effective learning style for folks, virtual workshops. So taking that into consideration in our team meetings. Is everything verbal? Is there any room for somebody to get to share something in a visual way? I mean, let's do some interpretive dance. I mean, I'm just kidding. And also, it could be fun. Um, so, a cool thing about this is simply having somebody take notes, or if you're able to take notes during the meeting and send out a quick email afterwards with a summary, is one way to support different people's processing style, give the clarity, and support people. And the beautiful thing about that is now there's an email of what was discussed, because people will forget and not necessarily hear everything, and it makes it clearer for everyone else. Next slide. So where is system support? So here's the good news. It's not all deficit. Um, for neurodivergent staff, the clarity after meetings. So that goes back to the email I was just talking about. And simply asking the person or asking the team, what do you need? I see you are a person. This is a structure. The expectation isn't that you just squeeze yourself into this box. The expectation is for me to show up in a way that allows you to teach me who you are. Flexible pathways to the same outcome. I'm curious, and you can put it in the chat or if somebody would like to speak to it. Uh, who has had the experience of a very particular way things are done, and not, and that way is not something that is an effective way for you. And if you were given some room to kind of find your way, you would be able to get to the same outcome. Anybody like to speak to that?
This
So,
is Mary,
hi.
and going through this, and I'm not beating myself up, but I can see many places going through this where I have been unclear or said something like, "Oh, you know what I mean,"
Mm-hmm.
and and they probably don't have the clarity
Mm-hmm.
that I should be giving. Not beating myself up, but I just know that I oftentimes will say, not give the clarity that I should. So
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to speak up. And you're not alone. So I really want to normalize how we show up versus how we might shift. So, Mary, I know you, just like everyone else, is doing the best that you can at any given moment. And how do we create space to, number one, give ourselves the compassion that we extend to everyone else, give ourselves the benefit of the doubt that we extend to others. So, in that space, we can actually create some room for ourselves, for our own. Man, I'm very much about the self-reflection and supportive of self because when you think about our work, we are our tool. Like there isn't a computer. Sure, there are trainings we can take to learn information. And at the end of the day, it's how you're bringing it in and kind of integrating it. And it becomes part of your tool set, which is you. So I'm a big believer in the how do we support ourselves with compassion, kindness, and grace, and doing what is going to be helpful and effective for our own nervous system, for our own self-reflection, for our own abilities to be able to take that step back, because that allows room to be able to do it for other people. So you first, like y'all, like yourselves first. I hope that's helpful. And there's zero expectation that people are going to walk away from this and be like, oh, I get healing centered leadership. And now I'm going to go do all these things and it's going to be amazing. Oh, no, please. I would actually ask you not to because you will burn yourself out and then feel, I don't know about y'all, but when I try to take on big changes, I end up beating myself up because I burn out. I can't do it. So, small, sustainable practices. Thank you again for sharing, Mary, and your vulnerability. Another way where systems do and can support is strength-based lens. What does the person bring versus what are they not doing? So the person who never gets, I mean, I don't, there's always that one person who doesn't get documentation done. There's always that one person that's late for all their appointments. There's always somebody, well, I say always, maybe not always. Uh, Whenever I'm in the always and never, I know I've digressed. Um, there is often these people on the teams, and everyone knows it, right? Like we know, and it might be you. Like, I haven't gotten my notes done from last week. Please don't tell anyone. And also, how do I give myself room to be able to take a step back and get them done this weekend? It's not going to be by judging myself. It's going to be me looking at myself with a strength-based lens and understanding I need a chunk of time without interruption. Somebody put on
There's
the,
a,
go
oh, I
ahead.
was going to say, there's something in the chat about Saturdays, Vanya. I don't know if you want me to read that or if you have access to the chat to read it.
I can see it. Thank you so much. Some clients call Saturdays silent Saturdays because no one works on Saturdays, and there is no support on weekends. Oh, I'm curious, Beatrice, and you don't have to answer it if you're not comfortable. And if you are, please speak up. That was this seen from your perspective as helpful or unhelpful to be able to work on Saturdays without support?
It did cause some chaos, because my children are grown. I'm not married. Saturday was perfect for me to be able to work on Saturdays. It was a whole new factor to my caseload. It was extremely profitable because you can bill for the weekend time. And it was perfectly, the building was silent except for the one client that I had. Peaceful. There were clients who wouldn't come in during the week because it was so crowded in the waiting room.
Oh,
And so I was able to bring those neurodivergent clients and have just this peaceful space. And so other staff felt like they do, all of us have to do that. I'm not doing it. Hell no, I'm not working on Saturday. But the supervisor, the director felt that giving me the key to the building was able to accommodate the client who said they hated Silent Saturday, and with my willingness to work on it. So it worked out really well for my clients. The other coworkers felt a little uneasy because they thought maybe they would have to start doing that, uh, but yeah, it worked out really well for those clients who just couldn't come in because it was too much. Plus the ones that felt, like she said, when I said Silent Saturday, nobody calls me, nobody comes over, there's no appointments.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna repeat back a little bit because your sound for me was a little bit in and out. What I believe I heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, for you, it was really helpful. And for people that you supported, and other staff became concerned because they thought they were gonna have to work Saturdays, but that's not the case. It's an example. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that because that is a really helpful example of what I'm talking about. How can there be that sort of flexibility, clear flexibility? So for Beatrice, am I saying your name correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Um, so that's a beautiful example of what I'm talking about. So there was structure, clarity, and flexibility to meet the needs for you and the people you support without putting it on everyone else. That's a healing centered move, leadership move. Everyone doesn't have to work Saturdays now because Beatrice does. And I can imagine people going, oh my God, what is she doing? Da, da, da. And you get to do what works for you and your clients. Thank you
And
for
I'll
sharing
never
that.
forget that phrase. She said she calls it Silent Saturdays because nobody does.
I love that. Thank you so much. All right, next slide. So, to just take a moment and reflect, where in your supervision practice is transparency most difficult and what gets in the way? And this is a moment, if you want to jot that down, for you to come back to and have a moment of self-reflection. Next slide. Identity, stigma, and access. Oof. Okay. I talked about this with the team about how much was I going to self-disclose, and I was uncertain. So clearly I'm going to, since I said that, right? But identity, stigma, and access. The stigma around neurodivergence shifts from culture and context. It intersects with race, gender, and class, and diagnosing is not a neutral process. How many Black little boys get identified as difficult and white boys get identified as ADD and boys will be boys? And those implicit biases set the course for a person's trajectory. We often see access to support. It is shaped by privilege and systemic inequity. So let's say someone from a marginalized group was able to get an accurate diagnosis. Now what? Do they have access to supports? Often not. Or there's like long wait lists, or they're just simply inadequate. Next slide. This is the one that I was really, yeah. So all of this is heavy. So I just want to acknowledge that. All of this is a lot. So what we do not see. This is not only in systems, this is also within the provider, if it's yourself or someone else. And these realities are with that person and they follow them into the room. It is not separate. Like, it's not, okay, I am neurodivergent here and now I'm going to be normal here. It is with them. It lives in the clinician and the systems. Like I think about how challenging it can be for folks of different backgrounds and orientations to show up how they quote unquote believe they need to show up versus how they're most capable. And we're unintentionally cutting off our own legs too when we're trying to push people into a frame that doesn't fit. Next slide. So the weight of self-disclosure. So there's so much that is carried with this. And if people are feeling vulnerable enough to share their experience, I'm going to share mine, and maybe that'll create some space for someone else to share theirs. What disclosing can mean and how the person carries it. So, I was diagnosed. It can be, so first, let me just on the slide, right? It can be seen as doubted, dismissed, disqualified. And it doesn't ever really, it doesn't just simply resolve. Like, will they believe me? What happens if they do? What happens if they don't? So I was diagnosed in the early 80s when it was not a thing. And what I mean by that, nobody talked about it. There was a lot of shame. People didn't know what to do with me. I remember these conversations very clearly. They would put me in honors classes and then move me back to special education. And I would just get moved around in all these systems because people were trying to find where I could fit, and I didn't fit any of them. I internalized all of that and carried shame with me for most of my life. Now, around this neurodivergent piece, people started talking about neurodivergence. Diagnosing has gotten more effective. People who normally aren't recognized are being more recognized, particularly like women, have been underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed for a very long time. Um, I honestly can't give a real timeline, but it's been maybe, I don't know, 10 years that people have been talking about it, or five, somewhere in there. And I was like, wow, this is wild. Everyone is just like open and talking about like that they have autism and ADD, and I'm all like kind of scared. Like, do I really want to be a part of this conversation? Are people going to think that I'm lying because now it's quote unquote trendy to say this? Because now, and I mean, clearly I've gotten to a place where I'm sharing, I mean, there's anxiety right in this moment. So let me just be honest about that. But where I practice just being genuinely who I am without masking, because I got to tell y'all, it is exhausting. I'm exhausted all the time. It's like, why? It's like, oh, because I'm trying so hard to squeeze into a box I don't fit. Um, so it's been a process of me being able to disclose and talk about it. And I still have this fear because I do hear providers talking about, oh, everybody, and the general public, oh, everybody's neurodivergent. Like, oh, it's being overdiagnosed. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to think that's what I'm doing. They're just wanting attention. And there's also a whole contingent of people who are healing centered and saying, hey, we're going to believe this person in front of us and support them in ways that they tell us they need it. And the uncertainty of how it's going to be received at any given time in any given environment is exhausting and challenging. So I'm curious if anyone else has a personal example that they would like to share in the chat or verbally. Of course, you don't have to. Challenge by choice. And the reason I'm talking about this is because these are the things people are carrying that you may not be aware of. People with neurodivergence, this is a particularly interesting time to be open about it. Sabrina, do you want to share?
Happy to. I will say that it wasn't until the past maybe 3 or 4 years working for N5 that I was actually able to name this neurodivergence quality that I have, and to be seen and to have someone model for me that it's okay to be open and to talk about that in a way that not only normalizes it, but also helps me feel more supported and connected to the people that I work with. It's opened up a whole new world of being able to process information and approach my work in a way that feels more digestible now. And I know that my colleagues see me and hear me and support me and vice versa. It's just such a great new environment to be part of.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. I super appreciate it. Can I clarify the question? I'm curious if there is someone in this group that is neurodivergent and or providing to our clients who are providers being neurodivergent. I'm talking about right now, I'm talking about people who are here. To kind of help reduce that. I mean, this is my intent. How do we start having honest conversations about this in ways where we believe people versus jumping to whatever our assumptions are? So when I talk about my struggles, they I get met with a lot of judgment and a lot of assumptions that it's not true. So I guess I'm just wanting to open up the conversation a little bit about our own experiences and how it's not there's something wrong with you and you don't know how to fit into the box. It's that box is not for you. So how do you find maybe you need a circular box, or I guess that wouldn't be a box, but like how do you find a circular container or like a rectangle or whatever it is, or get out of the box completely. I don't know if that answers your question, Bernice.
Yeah, I think it does a little bit. I guess I was just needing a little bit of clarification on that. But I think for me, I do not have like a diagnosis, but I do notice there are times that I really need quiet. Like I just need to step away. So the place where I work is community based, and so I go between our our community based clinic and then like out to an equine therapy site, which is a little bit more loud and active and everything. And so I do notice whenever I'm at the equine site, I need to step away because it can get a little too loud with the younger clients that other providers are working with. And because it is an equine site, there's not necessarily like office spaces. So it can be a little bit, it kind of sets me off, like my nervous system off a little bit because I feel like I have to rush through my sessions sometimes because of the noise that might be going on, but that's my own thing. So I really have to check myself and see where my client, make sure I'm following where my client is at. Um, because I can get distracted easily if I hear the other clients in the next room, like playing a game of Uno or something, or if I see like somebody walking by with one of the horses, I get like, oh wow, and it throws my my own thought process off sometimes.
Yeah.
So I understand that's something that I need to pay attention to. Um, but that's just, me.
Thank you. And I appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable. And I would like to like just mention the both and then we're going to move on because I get so excited when I'm on time, then I talk more and then we run behind again. So like which is like anyways, y'all can see it right now in this moment. This is an example. But like so thank you for being vulnerable. And there's a both and in there, right? So I am not removing responsibility from folks. We are responsible. And also, how do we find the supports and or create the supports for folks who are perfectly willing to take on the responsibility and the environment is not supportive of that person being able to do it? That's it, right? Is this both and? It's not an excuse for shitty behavior. Sometimes people think I'm saying that. No. It is, I recognize this aspect of myself, and is the environment I'm in create space for me to be able to do things in a way that works for me. That's what healing centered leadership is. Non-healing centered leadership is here is the box everybody has to fit into. And if you don't fit into it, there's a problem with you versus the system. All right, next slide, please. So what do we need to hold to this complexity with more care? And if it's for yourself, Start there, because the more we can do for ourselves, the more naturally it comes and how we show up for others. And if it's for others, because you're not neurodivergent, how do you hold this complexity in a way that supports others being able to let you know what they need? That's the good news. You don't have to figure it out. Like, because people can be like, oh my God, how can I figure out what everybody's needs are? You just ask. Just ask the person. Hey, I notice you're not getting your notes done. I'm curious what's going on with you and how I can be supportive. Then you get to find out what they need. Next slide. We are going into the activity, reframe the behavior. And what this is, you're going to have roles in your breakout rooms. I am trying to find my copy. See, this is a great example in real time of what it looks like for me. I had everything pulled up on my laptop to be able to access these things easily, and yet I can't find it. And I don't know what that's about. And later, when I'm closing all the windows, I'll be like, oh, there it was. So, okay, I just
The link is in the chat if you'd like to click on that, Vanya. It might help open it up for you.
found it, but thank you. So activity 2, we're going to be reframing the behavior. So what I'm asking people to do is I'm not asking you to solve anything or answer anything. I'm asking you to get curious. So one person take notes, one person is going to do the sharing, and one person is going to do the reframing without moving to solution. And if there's 4 people in there, the 4th person can also observe. And somebody is going to also be ready to share back if we have time in here. So think about what do you have a staff member that has behavior that confuses you? Does it frustrate you? That we don't understand, and why can't they just? That's a really helpful example. Like whenever I'm saying why can't they just, that's a moment of pause. That's a signal for me to pause and be like, whoa, Vanya, what's going on there? Why can't they just? There's probably a reason. Why not get curious? So instead of going to the assumption and whatever the bias is, I'm going to ask the person who is the responder to interpret what the potential cause could be. There's no right or wrong here. We're just practicing what it is to be curious. So, what's an interpretation if it's rooted in the nervous system? What one interpretation if it's rooted in cultural difference or cultural context, and one interpretation that places something in the environment or the system, not the person. So I'm asking you to interpret the behavior through the lens of nervous system difference, cultural difference, environmental system difference. Not a solution, just an interpretation to help us shift into looking at things from a little bit of a different angle. So does anyone have any questions? This is a meaty one, so I kind of expect questions.
Can you share the example that you have here for everyone? I think that might be helpful to get them started.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So a staff member always sends really long, detailed emails and seems to hurt when people do not respond to every single point. Like the kind of emails that are like, I don't know, 2 pages long, and you're just like, oh my God, you look at it and you may get overwhelmed. You're like, I can't even read this because it's too many words. And so you don't read it, you don't respond because you can't, or for whatever reason. And that person takes it really personally. So if you look at it through the nervous system, what may be going on for that person for them to feel like it's necessary? If you look through it through the cultural lens, maybe communication signals respect in some in their cultural context, a short or minimal reply can be seen as dismissive, or organizational of the verbal norms are unclear or inconsistent, and they may have learned that through the unspoken rules that writing everything down is the only reliable way to be heard. Was that helpful for clarity? Like I think about for me, emails, I notoriously hurt people's feelings in texts and emails. I have learned this. So before I send an email, because I'm just really, hey, can you do this thing? Right? I have learned that about myself. So I take a pause, taking responsibility, take a step back, and I read the email the first time, and then I go back and I add, hey, how's it going? I hope you're having a nice week. And then at the end, something or whatever. Because for me, I just am asking a question. And because of my directness, it gets misinterpreted as rude. That's through the nervous system lens. So was that helpful?
I would love to work with you. I'm also very straightforward. I don't need the flowery language.
Uh-huh.
And I will tell you that I've worked with some superiors that want immediate responses to emails and text messages. And sometimes I personally view that as power and control. You're not taking into account what I may be working on right at this moment.
Yeah.
And you want that immediate response.
That would be an example of interpreting it through the system. That behavior of the person needing an immediate response. Now, if you interpreted it through the nervous system, what could it be? And if you interpreted it through culture, what could it be?
Anxiety?
I don't know. I mean, this is what I'm asking y'all to do in your breakout rooms.
Yeah. So on that
Catherine?
note, the breakout rooms are ready to go.
Okay.
I want to ask you though, as far as timing is concerned, I know we originally planned for around 15 to 20 minutes for this one. And I want to also be mindful of where we're at in the time. So
How far behind are we?
a lot.
Oh, okay.
But all for good reason. Lots of really
Okay.
good discussion. So I would say I would give them at no more than 15, but
Okay.
shave it to 10 if you feel like that's feasible.
Let's do, oh shoot, it's 12:40. Okay. Yeah, let's do 10. Do the best that you can. And instead of sharing back verbally when we get back, we're going to, you can write it in the chat. Welcome back. So, in the interest of time and not keeping everyone here late, write in the chat anything that you would like to share about observations, awarenesses, realizations, and we're going to move forward. Next slide. I love this phrase, and my friend, a friend of mine and colleague, Ruth Yanez, is the one who actually shared this. The psychologist interprets, the healer translates. She's a therapist here in Albuquerque. Interpret is when we explain the meaning of, to analyze through a particular framework or lens. To translate means to carry the meaning across, to render something in a language another can receive and recognize as their own. So we have translators here for those who are Spanish speakers as a beautiful example, and to kind of think about, are you interpreting people's behaviors or are you supporting the translation so people can receive and be received in their own language, whether it's neurodivergent, actual English or Spanish or ASL language. Next slide, please. We revisit the staff stability as a clinical variable. This really affects outcomes and the continuity of care. When people leave a practice, it does register as a rupture for folks. There are real beautiful ways that the soft handoff can be done, and it's still a loss. So there's a both and. If you are somebody who has people, like you're in charge of people and they give you their notice, I know some practices will ask them not to come back. I would really highly encourage and support folks in giving that person transition time. So their folks can be supported ethically. The general standard for our field is 4 weeks. Next slide. Structural accountability and repair. The more we can be predictable, we reduce the cognitive emotional load on staff. Accountability is meaningful only when paired with genuine support. And remember, when we're talking about this stuff, everyone benefits. It's not just the person that doesn't fit into the box. Next slide. The how belongs to the person. As supervisors, we get to hold the goal and the support, not the method. So if there's room to allow people to get to the goal, how they're able to. Next slide. So bias, microaggressions, and equitable culture is not going to get the attention it deserves. This is there's several workshops that would create, and still not enough room. So I just want to acknowledge that and name it, because our bias shapes how behavior is interpreted and microaggressions accumulate. We all have bias. I really want to normalize that. We have implicit bias, we have explicit bias, everything in between. We are human. Our brains are wired that way. It's not necessarily to get rid of it and completely change who you are. How can we recognize what our biases are so we can put them aside and allow the person in front of us to tell us who they are versus who we think they are? And my next slide, microaggressions accumulate. It might be the first time you've asked somebody where they're from. It's the 1,000th time they've heard it. It might be the first time you've asked that person, can you touch their hair? And it might be the 1,000th request. So when we do something and a person has like a response, instead of assuming they're overreacting because it was just, and I just meant it this way and blah, 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 blah. Intent doesn't matter. And also bringing in awareness. It's not about you. It's about their experience in the world. So how do we own it, repair, without having to justify? An apology with justification is, oh, I apologize. I was just really curious about where you were from because you look so interesting. That would be an example of how not to do an apology. An apology to the like, where are you from would be like, oh, I apologize. Period. Without justification. All right. So, an equitable culture. Oh, excuse me. Equitable team culture is a leadership responsibility, not a team personality trait. If we're expecting our teams to be equitable when we are clearly in the power position and not addressing it and doing what we can to create a healing-centered environment, it is just an unfair and impossible burden and task to meet. And it's built through the decisions about who is included, whose feedback is acted on, and how concerns are held. What kind of leader do you want to be remembered as? Next slide, sorry. I apologize. What kind of leader do you want to be remembered as? What is one step towards that today? We are not going to have time to do the last activity together, the one thing. So about what we carry forward. Next slide to the what we carry forward. One more. Thank you. Supervision is a culture building. It supports, protects capacity, and all of these things. So I'm going to ask you to take that third exercise with you. And when you have time and bandwidth, to just give yourself some space to think about the questions and to answer them in a way that makes sense to you. Next slide. Healing-centered leadership is not a destination. It is a daily orientation toward the people in your care. So I'll call back to the do it in a way that is sustainable. It doesn't change overnight. And this was also a really fantastic example of my ineffective relationship with time that comes from my neurodivergence, right? So it's like this experience of, I know it's going to take me 3 hours. That's what I think. So I'll give myself 6 and then it takes 2 days. Or this content is too long, so I'm going to cut it in half and it's still a lot of content. So thank you for being a witness to who I am. And I appreciate everybody showing up today.